Lesson plan. How do we unpack the standards to design a lesson plan? Unpacking standards is an essential process that teachers use to identify the learning outcomes and skills that students need to achieve. It involves analyzing the standards to determine the knowledge, skills, and abilities that students should acquire during a specific instructional period. Why do we need to unpack the standards? First of all, we need to identify the big idea. Unpacking is essential to identify the big ideas and core tasks contained within. By definition, big ideas are the conceptual thoughts that we need to deliver and we need students to master in parallel. Those are statements that are contained in the content standards, which we need to identify and include. Big ideas are broad, they're abstract, they can be summarized in 1 to 2 words, they are universal in application, they are timeless, they are represented by different examples that share common attributes. They are a conceptual lens for any study, and they cover ground horizontal cross subjects and vertical through the curriculum. They can be a concept, a theme, an ongoing debate, a point of view, central paradox or theory, or underlining assumption, recurring questions, or main principles. The other reason why we need to unpack the standards is to write the possible essential questions. Essential questions are designed to provoke and sustain students' inquiry while focusing learning and final performances. Conclusions drawn by the learner, not recited facts. What makes a question essential? First of all, essential questions cause genuine and relevant inquiry into the big ideas and core content. An essential question provokes deep thought, lively discussion, sustained inquiry, and new understandings as well as more questions. It requires students to consider alternative way evidence support their ideas and justify their answers. It stimulates vital, ongoing rethinking of big ideas, assumptions, and prior lessons. It sparks meaningful connections with prior learning and personal experiences. It naturally recurs, creating opportunities for transfer to another situation and subject. So, looking into all those very important and critical points that we need to outline, let's see how we can unpack the standards. First of all, we need to identify the standards. The first step is to identify the standards you will be addressing in the lesson plan. This includes identifying the specific grade level standards and the content area standards that are relevant to the lesson. As a teacher, start by carefully reading and understanding the standards that you need to teach. Analyze the language of the standards, identify the key concepts, and clarify any ambiguity. Also, we need to make sure that we involve the curriculum team in order to review the curriculum maps of the grade level before, grade level after, that are pertinent and relevant to the standard. So when we identify the standard, we need to determine the learning objectives, we need to determine the specific learning outcomes, we need to be specific, measurable, and we need to look into the alignment between that standard and what we need students to achieve as a result. Break down the standards. Once the standards have been identified, the teacher needs to break them down into specific learning objectives. This involves identifying the skills and knowledge that students will need to master in order to meet the standard. So we will use the standard, we will identify the objectives, and we have to make sure that those objectives are specific, they are measurable and achievable, and definitely they are aligned with the standards. Keeping in mind one very important note when we break down the standards is determining the prior knowledge. We need to determine what students already know about the topic and identify any misconceptions they may have. This will help us to tailor the lesson to meet the needs of all students, as well as check for the readiness, which is key for differentiation. Create assessments. Based on the learning objectives, the teacher should create assessments that will measure student mastery of the learning objectives. This may include formative and summative assessment. So we need to plan assessments that align with the learning objectives. We need to make sure that we measure students' understanding of concepts and skills taught in the lesson. And we have to make sure that the assessment is providing opportunities for students to demonstrate their understanding and the mastery. Maybe teachers here only look at the closure, the plenary, the exit tickets. This is not the only assessment that we have to think about when we are unpacking the standards, because assessment is ongoing throughout the lesson delivery to measure the attainment and progress. So you need to make sure that you will design and create opportunities for reflection throughout the lesson, and this might include group discussions, exit tickets, reflective forms, or KWL assessments, paper and pencil. Different forms could be used based on the standards. Plan instruction. Once the assessments have been developed, the teacher can plan instruction to support student learning and mastery of the learning objectives. This can include selecting the instructional materials, designing learning activities, and identifying the instructional strategies and methods that will be used. We have to make sure that the instructional strategies are aligned with the learning objective standards and assessment. Instructional strategies should be engaging, interactive, and differentiated to meet the needs of all students. Differentiate instruction. In designing the lesson plan, the teacher should consider the diverse learning needs of students and differentiate instruction accordingly. This includes adapting instruction to meet the needs of students who may need additional support or challenge. When we plan the activities, we need to make sure that the material available will allow us to use that instructional strategy effectively and efficiently to create a difference in the outcomes of students. Activities should be relevant and meaningful to students, and material should be accessible and appropriate.